All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. So once again, my name is Kevin Hancock, Director of Solutions here at Exostar. And thanks for joining me today for CMMC in the Cloud, Best Practices for User Access and Environment Selection. Before I dive into the formal presentation and demonstration, let me just cover a few housekeeping details. So today's session is scheduled to last 30 minutes. That does include Q&A. Now, what I'll be doing for Q&A is if you go ahead and type your questions into the chat or the Q&A section, I'll go ahead and answer those after today's presentation. If for some reason, if one of your questions is, will I receive a copy of today's presentation? The answer is yes. So as a follow-up to today's session, we will be sending you a PDF version of today's slides, as well as a link to today's recording. Now, you're going to be muted during today's presentation. That's why I asked that you submit questions via the chat. There weren't any submitted ahead of time, so that's why we're going to do it that way. If for some reason we do have an outage, just wait for a minute and try to reconnect. You can do that either by just refreshing your browser or going to the link that you receive via email and coming back into the session that way as well. If at any time you'd like to speak with one of our Exostar Managed Microsoft experts, or if you have any questions about Exostar, our solutions, or just CMMC in general, you can reach out to us at managedmicrosoft365@exostar.com. You can also come to our website, www.exostar.com. There's a form there on every page that you can submit questions to us, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So with that, let's dive into today's session. So what we're going to talk about today is how do I collaborate in and across my partners when I work in a highly regulated industry like aerospace and defense. How do I have a compliant storage area for controlled unclassified information that I may need to share both across my team and also possibly with partners? Can I make it easy to use so people in my organization and external can use what they're used to using and not slow it down, if you will, by having to learn a new tool? Now, in this instance, we're going to be talking about Exostar's Managed Microsoft 365 solution. That allows you to do collaboration within a secure enclave. What that allows you to do is bring in people into a familiar infrastructure and a familiar tool and do their collaboration there. Now, in the aerospace and defense industry, this is for those organizations that need to externally collaborate with third parties, with controlled unclassified information, or even sensitive information utilizing, kind of your own internal security labels and things like that. It could also be within the organization if only a portion of your organization are those individuals that need to get access to or work with controlled unclassified information. Maybe you're one of those organizations where, maybe only a portion of our team is actually part of this. And I don't want to have to move everything in my organization to, a space with the kind of controls that are necessary to meet CMMC requirements. So I want to carve out or provide a space just for those teams and those team members. Now, the reason that Exostar has expertise in this area is that we have a network of over 215,000 people today across 52,000 organizations in the aerospace and defense industries that collaborate today utilizing Exostar solutions. You become part of the network when your organization is invited to do things like PO collaboration, document collaboration, engineering collaboration, etc. Your organization is vetted, and then the individuals from your organization also need access to those applications, go through some kind of proofing or vetting process before they get access to those applications. And we use that to front end all of our different kinds of solutions. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is one of those particular solutions. This solution is built on Microsoft. It's built within a Teams environment, and it's built on top of an architecture or an idea that many of us know, in the IT space as an extranet, what Microsoft calls a meet me tenant. It is a outside tenant where I'm going to do collaboration with third parties because I don't want to invite them into my own corporate space. When we invite individuals in, we oftentimes need to, go through a number of different hoops to allow those organizations in. And Exostar can do that as part of our overall solution. Exostar does this today to let organizations and individuals into the network. So Exostar manages those third-party identities and builds that trust relationship across the community. This means that your IT staff doesn't have to worry about joining people to your own corporate directory, managing their identities there, having those external parties have to manage yet another credential or another device, etc. The other power of the Exostar network is that I get to use one credential or one experience, if you will, to get access to multiple applications from multiple people that I'm working with. So I can get into Boeing supply chain portal. I can get into a Lockheed Martin collaboration system, all utilizing an Exostar credential because I've gone through that proofing process. This follows that same idea where I can go into these applications via Exostar, get access to it, and then work with those parties I need to, whether or not they're part of my organization or they're part of third parties that I work with as a partner. Also, because this is a managed Exostar service, Exostar takes over the technical operations, the monitoring, the SOC NOC expertise, the 24-hour monitoring of the system, as well as the support of the system itself. So when users have questions, they have problems connecting, etc., they don't come to your IT staff. You can have Exostar answer those questions and get them up and running. So in this secure enclave, this is built on top of Microsoft Teams. It's a Teams tenant stood up in Microsoft's GCC High environment. The Exostar solution, as part of other obligations we've gone through that Cyber Command penetration testing of the application itself. We're utilizing a Teams environment and we're maintaining it there within the browser. So organizations can utilize those Microsoft applications safely and securely, but not have to download them into their own environment to work. While the things are there in the enclave, Exostar satisfies 85 of those 110 NIST 800-171 controls. And as I've talked about, because Exostar is managing the enclave on your behalf as a service, we're going to take away that burden of managing another tenant or managing the configurations required in your own corporation's tenant to share information with those third parties. We're going to provide this external tenant, and that's where you're going to do your collaboration around the sensitive documents. And as I mentioned before, that might be controlled unclassified information. It might also just be sensitive information that you have across and within your organization that you need to share with partners, but you don't want to risk oversharing by bringing them into a tenant and mistakenly, putting something that shouldn't be shared with partners out there where possibly they could get it. So the way this system is architected is as you see here. It's a standalone tenant built for that Exostar customer. Exostar is managing and supporting this particular tenant. We embed an Exostar application within the Teams workspace. That Exostar application is what puts the guardrails around the environment to both allow you to manage the the environment. So you get to set up how you collaborate. You get to invite both your internal team members and your external team members. But it puts some guardrails around that. So for example, the system is set up in a least privileged access model. So what that means is first, your organization has to be given access to the tenant. But even when your organization is, only individuals that are explicitly invited into the tenant see that it exists and can get to it. They're going to authenticate via Exostar's managed access gateway and get in. Now, if your organization already has a tenant stood up in Microsoft's GCC High, we can provide an Azure B2B connection for your internal users to get access. But you may then choose for Exostar to manage those third parties via our managed access gateway. If you already have a trust relationship with that third party, we can also affiliate with their directory and provide them an Azure B2B connection as well. But we allow you to determine how you want to handle that access. Now, this Exostar application is also what establishes and provides the team creation and user invitation process. This is done through custom roles that this application creates and custom forms and fields that you use to create that team. So when you set up the environment, or when Exostar sets up the environment on your behalf, we provide custom roles through this Exostar application. One of those roles is what we call a sponsor administrator. That sponsor administrator, and it can be one or more persons, are the ones who manage this space on behalf of the Exostar customer. So they're the ones who are going to invite other members in, give them a role, and give them access to particular teams. Those users are only going to get access to those teams which they've been explicitly invited into. It also provides some additional core functionality to allow us to, if you will, maintain that control unclassified information or other sensitive information there within the tenant. It allows you to block downloads of a particular team space. It allows you to set up a mailbox for a particular team. So individuals from that project, that program, however you want to define those team spaces, can send information into the tenant without it, again, having to go to an individual. Then you can share that information with others in the team space and work on it there within the secure environment. So all of those things are also added in as part of this Exostar application that is, again, is governing that team space. Now, to give you a better feel for how this actually looks, let me do a demonstration for you of the actual application itself. So I've got the environment running here. So I'm logged in as Adam Spark, and Adam Spark works for Glory Minerals, and Glory Minerals is the Exostar customer. So Glory Minerals designated Adam Spark as the sponsor administrator. So he's managing this environment for Glory Minerals, and Exostar is managing the team's environment behind it. And we've deployed our application here into that team's interface. Now, as an administrator, Adam gets to, find out what's going on across all the different team spaces. So, for example, they work with a company called Granger Systems as a partner and a third party. So Emma Jackson works for Granger Systems, and Adam needs to know what programs she's a part of, what kind of role she has in those. Or maybe Emma has left these teams or these projects, and we need to delete her because we need to add on the other person from Granger Systems who is replacing Emma on those projects. So we could go in, we could delete her, and then we could invite that new person into the team. And I'll show you how to invite people in just a minute. I could also, as Adam, I could add in additional sponsor administrators, right? I've added Catalina and Maya. I don't want to be the only person responsible for this. I need some help, right? We're a 24-hour shop. I need some other folks across the globe to also help in this space. Now, the way we're allowing third parties to access is we're providing, again, an interface for the administrators to add in those partners that they work with. So in here, we've added in, 3 or 4 different partners that we work with, including some individuals that come from social domains. These folks, they're going to register their account in Exostar, right? Their authentication source is Exostar. So even the Granger Systems folks, they're going to register for an account in Exostar. They're going to set up the multi-factor authentication, and then their organization is invited in by our company, and then we're going to give them access into particular team spaces. If I wanted to add in another partner domain, I would simply click it, say add at exostar.com, though they're already added, and then those individual users could come in as well. Now, as I mentioned before, we could also do Azure B2B connections. So if you provide us a whitelist of partners that you want to bring in via that, we can set that up at the time of instantiation of the tenant, but we can do that throughout. You just let us know who we need to add or subtract from that whitelist. What we can also do is once we're done with different teams, we can delete those teams, which is a hard delete. We remove all the information from that team, or we can archive that team. So if you've got requirements to maintain information for some amount of time, but you don't want other users to continue to iterate over that or stumble upon those things, you can archive that team instead. If you decide to restore that team, you can restore the data and the structure and then just add the users back in. Now, something we've also added recently is a link to the various compliance documents around Exostar's readiness to be CMMC compliant. So we provide that evidence, we provide that shared responsibility matrix, we provide the SSP around what we do that. We're currently going through the 3PAO audit to allow us to be that FedRAMP moderate equivalent cloud service. So that's currently in flight. So with that said, now let's talk about those simple use cases of how do I share information with my partners. So in that, for example, let's take a real world example where Glory Minerals is starting a new program or project with some third parties. They need to create a collaboration space for that team. And we're going to call that project Conover. So I'm going to create a team. And I'm going to say it's a 12-month project that we've got just starting up. And I'm going to go ahead and create that team space. Now, at this time, only Adam has access to Team Conover, right? But that's where the work gets done, right? That's where we invite people to come in. That's where we're going to work with folks here in this particular team space. So in order to add users into that space, I'm going to go back into the Exostar app, and I'm going to invite a group of users. In this case, I've got a delimited list of users from various domains. Some are here from Glory Minerals. Some are from external domains, those partners that we've already added in. And we're going to go ahead and invite these users into the team space. Now, the application knows where to look up these different users and where to add them from. Now, most of these are people coming in through Exostar. So it's going to know if they're already here within the system and whether or not they have Exostar accounts. Now, We did add one social domain, yahoo.com, which isn't yet in those domains. So in order to add this user, I'd need to go back into administration. I'd have to add in Yahoo, tell them to authenticate through Exostar, and then this person would be invited in, but they'd have to first create their account in Exostar. Then they would get access into MAG, and then they would get access into M365. Now, we've got other users that are already in the system. They're already in Exostar. They're actually already here within the tenant itself because they're working on other teams and other projects. Now, if they're from Glory Minerals, I can make Shiva the team manager for this space. So now Shiva can manage this team space without coming back to me, Adam, to add people, delete people, etc. Shiva can now do all that by herself. Others are going to come in from external sources and they're going to just be members, but they'll have full access to that team space. Now, some of these users don't yet have their Exostar account set up. So we've identified those. Now, these people are going to get an invitation, but their invitation is going to direct them to first register and create their Exostar account, get their multi-factor authentication, and then come in. And then once they get into that, then they'll see that they have access to M365. And then they'll see that they have access to the Conover team. And when they go into those team spaces, especially with the new people that were just invited, that's going to be the only team space that they have access to. And again, that's where we're going to do the work on this particular project. So we've got the team space here. We've got, people added, but we don't yet have any information added. So what I also did is I sent in some information to start to populate Team Conover. Now, I didn't yet have a space created, but I used the additional features that the Exostar application has enabled in this space to create a mailbox for an inbox team. So what I did for this particular instance, and this is just, if you will, one of those practices you may want to use if you think you would need this functionality. So I created a CUI inbox team. I tell people that, look, if you need to send us sensitive information, send it here. Don't send it to an individual. Send it to this particular team space. So we sent in the necessary information because we've enabled this team file drop capability. So this creates a team mailbox that people can send files into. So if I look at that inbox, you'll see that, a few minutes ago before this session started, I sent some information in to start to populate Project Conover. So if we view that message, you'll see, I made a short message from my exostar.com account and I attached some files. I can then export this information into the CUI inbox team. I could then start to move that information and move it into that Conover team. Now this is going to, pull up this information or bring it down from the inbox, move it into the files area within team. In this case, it's going to come into CUI inbox. I could then open it up in SharePoint and move it over. So it should open up in SharePoint mode. I can then, oops, I don't know why that happened. I could then move it into that team Conover. Now, it's going to take a little bit for that to happen because Conover teams aren't automatically with all functionality created just at the snap. It does take a few minutes for all that to populate. So that could be very well why it glitched right there. But let me go to a team space that actually has some information in it. So as I mentioned before, we work with our partner Grainger Systems. We have a team space for them. We have a number of team spaces for them, including that files area. So in this team space, this is where we can start to share documents. We can start to co-author documents, right? We can open the document here within the team space. I can do that within the browser, and I can update and make changes, to my heart's content over these, these things. It's going to save my changes, know that I did it, do all those things. Oops, can't spell. And then as I do this, right, it's gonna, here we're really just talking about your basic Teams functionality, that ability to store and share files of all kinds, to, work on those collaboratively. So we can open files, two people can work on files at the same time. You'll be able to see their changes. You'll be able to track those changes, etc. Now, we're also keeping track of that information from an audit history as well. So you can get reports from the system about who made changes on kind of the Exostar side, right? They use the Exostar app to create a new team. Those are the Exostar app actions. You can also do it on individual files, and those are the SharePoint audit reports, which keep track of all those changes, who made them, who possibly downloaded a file, etc. Now, if we wanted to, we could also block downloads of files, right? Maybe we don't want our partners to be able to remove information from here. We just want to be able to collaboratively work in this space and kind of keep it maintained here. One of those other important kind of add-on features of the Exostar application is in that manage teams space. Within a particular team, you can decide to turn on additional functionality, and some of that functionality is wrapped around, that permissions area where you can turn off and on permissions to block download from your particular space. Now, as you see, we're still building that space. That's why these permissions cannot be changed until the site is created. So that's all going on in the background while we're starting to work in this space. Once it's obviously available, we could turn that on, and then folks couldn't download information from that particular team space. We also do get that capability to perform chats, to have a conference call or a video chat with individuals when they're here in the system. When I come into my browser, Teams recognizes my presence. I'm sorry, I've got the little green check mark by me to say, yes, I'm here currently within this space. If I'm using this and I also have my own corporate Teams tenant, it's typically recommended that you use the non-corporate tenant here in the browser while you're using the kind of the corporate environment for your everyday work. So hopefully what you're able to see today is another way, or a way to better share with partners to ensure that that information is kept both separate from your corporate tenant, or your partners are kept separate from your corporate tenant, yet still provide them a way to collaborate securely with your organization. It's built on that familiar Teams functionality, built on top of Exostar with that, or with those guardrails in place to safeguard that information. So Exostar has a number of solutions, both on supply chain space, secure collaboration, as you saw today, but also around general CMMC compliance. This kind of system works for both small and medium-sized businesses, as well as your large organizations. We'd be more than happy to speak with you about any of those things. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and look at chat, see if we got any questions that came in. So when you're viewing the information in your browser, then your desktop is typically out of scope. The information doesn't save anything within your browser. There's no information to get to get at. So in those cases, it's typically out of scope. However, if you do download the information, then it is in scope. So with that, that's the only question we got. So I'm going to go ahead and thank everybody for your time and attendance today. If you have any questions, please reach out. As I mentioned, you will be receiving a copy of today's slides and a recording of today's presentation as follow-ups. Thanks so much and have a great rest of the day.